Good evening, all, and welcome back to Dark Fears. Tonight, we journey into the forgotten corners of Pennsylvania, a land of isolated small towns, endless forests, decaying industry, and places where help does not reach, to uncover 7 of the most disturbing and terrifying small-town horror stories ever shared. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe to Dark Fears for daily horror content that will keep you up at night. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when the darkness calls. Now, let us step into the shadows of Pennsylvania, where civilization ends and terror begins. My name is Ethan Moore, and this happened when I was 26, after I moved back to my hometown of Coleridge, Pennsylvania. I left that place the day I turned 18, swearing I'd never come back. But when my father suffered a stroke, promises became luxuries I couldn't afford. Coleridge was smaller than I remembered. Fewer lights, fewer people. The coal plant had shut down years earlier, and most houses sat half empty, windows dark even at night. Everyone who stayed had a reason, and most of those reasons sounded like excuses. On my first evening back, I noticed something odd. No matter where I went, the grocery store, the diner, even the hospital parking lot, I felt watched, not followed. Watched. Like someone had already memorized my routines. When I asked my childhood friend Mark if the town had changed, he went quiet. He stared at the road and said, "Just don't walk alone after dark, and if you hear footsteps behind you, don't turn around." I laughed. He didn't. The first night back in my childhood home, sleep refused to come. The house felt wrong, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. Around 2:17 a.m., I heard footsteps outside my bedroom window. Slow, heavy, deliberate. They didn't crunch like gravel steps should. They sounded practiced. I told myself it was a raccoon, or maybe one of the few neighbors still awake. But the footsteps stopped directly beneath the window, and something stayed there. Waiting. I didn't look. Mark's warning echoed in my head, louder than my own thoughts. I lay frozen, staring at the ceiling, counting my breaths. Minutes passed, maybe longer. Then I heard it again. Footsteps moving away, dragging slightly, as if one leg didn't bend right. The next morning, I found footprints in the dirt below my window. They were deep, uneven, and far too large. What terrified me most wasn't their size. It was the fact they didn't lead away. They stopped, as if whoever made them simply vanished. The footprints stayed with me all day, burned into my thoughts, no matter how hard I tried to focus on my father at the hospital. When I finally worked up the nerve to ask one of the nurses if anyone strange had been around the neighborhood at night, her smile faded just a little too quickly. She said nothing unusual ever happened in Coleridge. Her tone made it clear the conversation was over. That evening, Mark came by with a 6-pack and the kind of forced cheer people use when they're terrified of silence. When I told him about the footprints, he didn't ask questions. He didn't joke. He just nodded, like I'd confirmed something he already knew. "That's why people leave," he said quietly, "and why some of us don't." He finally told me about the man people whispered about, the one who used to work the mines long after they were declared unsafe. An accident trapped him underground for days. When they found him, he was alive. But wrong. He never left Coleridge, even after he died. That night, the footsteps returned, closer than before. This time, they circled the house. I could hear them scrape against the porch, pause at the front door, then move on. My father slept through it all, machines softly beeping beside his bed in the next room, unaware of whatever was measuring the house from the outside. At exactly 3:11 a.m., the doorknob turned. slowly, carefully. I held my breath so hard my chest burned. The knob stopped turning, and for a moment, everything was silent. Then came a sound I still can't explain. A low, wet inhale, like lungs struggling to remember how breathing works. A shadow slid beneath the door, stretching unnaturally long, twitching as if it had joints where joints shouldn't be. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just watched as the shadow lingered, then retreated. In the morning, the front door was wide open, and muddy footprints led inside, ending just outside my bedroom door. By the fifth night, exhaustion had stripped away my fear and left only anger. I was done being hunted in my own childhood home. I called Mark and demanded answers. Real ones. After a long pause, he told me to meet him at the old mine entrance just outside town, the one sealed off with rusted fencing and warning signs no one obeyed anymore. Standing there felt like stepping into a grave that hadn't decided who it belonged to yet. Mark finally admitted the truth. The man from the mine wasn't just a ghost story. People had seen him for decades, always watching, always walking, never speaking. Anyone who stayed in Coal Ridge long enough eventually heard him outside their home. "He doesn't want you dead," Mark said, voice shaking. "He wants you to stay." As if summoned by the words, a faint dragging sound echoed from the tunnel behind us. Slow footsteps, familiar ones. The darkness inside the mine seemed to breathe, exhaling cold air that smelled like wet earth and rot. We ran. I packed my things that same night. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. My father was stable enough to be transferred to a care facility in another county, and I took that as my escape route. Coal Ridge had taken enough from my family. As I loaded the car, I felt it again. That familiar sensation of being watched. The streetlights flickered one by one, plunging the road into darkness. Then I heard the footsteps behind me, closer than ever, right at the edge of the driveway. I didn't turn around. I got in the car, hands shaking, and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, something tall stood just beyond the glow of the headlights. Its shape was human, but bent wrong, as if time itself had crushed it. It raised one arm slowly, not in anger, but in warning. As I drove away, the radio crackled to life on its own. A single sentence came through, distorted and wet. "You can leave." But Coal Ridge never lets go. I thought leaving Coal Ridge would end it. For a while, it almost did. My father was transferred, my life slowly stabilized, and weeks passed without footsteps or shadows. I convinced myself fear had followed me out of town, not the thing itself. Then the dreams started. Every night I was back on the same street. Streetlights flickering, houses empty. No matter how fast I walked, I never reached the end. Behind me, those footsteps echoed, slow, dragging, patient. In the dreams, I could feel its certainty. It wasn't chasing me. It knew time was on its side. One morning, I woke up to muddy footprints outside my apartment door. Fresh, wet, too large to belong to any normal person. The building's security cameras had no footage from that night. A full 6-hour gap, wiped clean. I realized then that Coal Ridge wasn't a place. It was a claim. And somehow, I was still part of it. Months later, Mark disappeared. No goodbye, no warning, just gone. His car was found parked near the old mine entrance, driver's door open, keys still in the ignition. Police called it voluntary disappearance. I knew better. That night, my phone rang at 3:11 a.m. No caller ID. I answered before I could stop myself. All I heard was breathing, wet, labored, familiar. Then Mark's voice whispered my name, stretched and distorted, like it was being spoken through someone else's mouth. "Don't forget us," it said. Outside my window, footsteps echoed on the pavement below. Slow, heavy, certain. I didn't look. I never do. Because deep down, I know the truth now. You can move away. You can start over. But some towns don't fade into memory. They follow. And one night, they come to collect. After Mark's disappearance, I tried to live like a normal person. I stopped answering unknown calls. I moved apartments. I even changed jobs. But fear has a way of resurfacing when you pretend it doesn't exist. It began with small things. My radio turning on by itself at night, always tuned to static. The smell of damp earth lingering in places it didn't belong. Elevators stopping on floors no one had pressed. I started seeing him in reflections, not clearly, never directly. A tall, crooked outline behind me in dark windows. A shape standing too still at the end of a hallway mirror. Every time I turned around, nothing was there. But the air felt heavier, like the world itself was warning me not to ask questions. One evening, I received a letter with no return address. Inside was a single photograph, my childhood home in Coleridge, taken recently. The lights were on, and in the upstairs window, I was standing there, staring out. I knew then it wasn't just following me. It was preparing me. Last week, I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of footsteps inside my apartment. Slow, familiar, patient. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I already knew how this ended. The bedroom door creaked open just enough for darkness to spill inside. I felt it standing there, studying me the way it always had. Then, softly, clearly, it spoke for the first time. Home. In that moment, I understood the truth Mark never said out loud. Coleridge doesn't haunt people. It recruits them. It keeps pieces of you until leaving feels like dying, and staying feels inevitable. The footsteps retreated. The door closed. When morning came, my lease termination notice sat on the kitchen table, signed in my handwriting. I don't remember writing it. I'm packing now, not to escape, to return, because the man who never left Coleridge is no longer alone. My name is Caleb Turner, and this happened when I was 32, after my wife and I moved to a quiet town in rural Pennsylvania called Hollow Creek. We didn't choose it for charm. We chose it because it was cheap, remote, and promised a clean break from a past neither of us liked talking about. Hollow Creek had one main road, one gas station, and one church. The church stood at the highest point in town, white paint peeling, steeple crooked like a broken finger pointing at the sky. No sign listed service times. No cars ever parked outside. Yet every Sunday morning at exactly 6 a.m., the bell rang. The first time I heard it, I thought it was charming, traditional, old-fashioned. The second time, I noticed something strange. No one in town ever mentioned going there. When I asked our neighbor, Mrs. Klein, if the church was still active, her face tightened. "It hasn't been," she said carefully, "for a very long time." That night, the bell rang again. The bell didn't just ring. It echoed, low, heavy, and wrong, like the sound was coming from underground rather than above. My wife, Nora, woke up beside me, gripping my arm hard enough to hurt. "Do you hear singing?" she whispered. I listened. Beneath the bell's toll was something faint but unmistakable. Voices, not loud, not clear. A slow, droning hymn carried on the morning air. Words stretched too long, notes sagging as if the singers were exhausted just from existing. I looked out the window toward the church. Lights burned inside every stained glass panel, glowing dull yellow through the fog. Shapes moved behind the glass. Too many shapes. Later that day, I drove into town and asked the gas station clerk about the service. He didn't even look up from the register. "Bell rings on its own," he said. "Always has." "But the singing," I pressed. He finally met my eyes, pale and serious. "If you hear that," he said, "it means someone new is being welcomed." That night, someone knocked on our door. The knock came again, slow and patient, as if whoever stood outside already knew we were awake. Nora and I exchanged a look that carried every unspoken fear between us. I grabbed the baseball bat we kept by the bed and moved toward the door, my heart hammering so loudly I was sure it could be heard outside. When I opened it, no one stood there. Instead, resting neatly on the welcome mat, was a church pamphlet. Old, yellowed. The paper smelled faintly of mildew and wax. Across the front, in faded ink, were the words, "Sunday service. All are welcome." There was no date, no address. Just a hand-drawn cross that looked uneven, like it had been sketched by someone trembling. I picked it up, and something fell out. A photograph. It showed the interior of the church, packed with people sitting shoulder to shoulder. Every face in the photo was blurred, except one. Mine. I dropped it like it burned. From the hill above town, the church bell rang once more, long and low, as if acknowledging me. The next morning, Nora insisted we leave town for a few days. She said Hollow Creek felt wrong, like the air itself was pressing in on her. I agreed, but when I tried to start the car, the engine wouldn't turn over, not even a click. The dashboard lights flickered once, then died. We walked to the gas station instead. The clerk's eyes flicked to the pamphlet clutched in my hand before I said a word. His jaw tightened. "You got invited?" he said. I asked him what that meant. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Everyone who hears the singing gets invited eventually. Some ignore it, some don't." He hesitated. "The ones who go don't leave Hollow Creek." On our way back, we passed the church. Up close, it looked older than the town itself. The front doors were slightly open, just enough to reveal darkness inside. I swear I heard breathing from within. Slow, collective, waiting. The doors creaked wider on their own. Nora squeezed my hand. The bell began to ring. That night, the singing returned, closer than before. It drifted through the walls like smoke, seeping into every room, no matter how tightly we shut the windows. Nora sat on the edge of the bed, hands over her ears, whispering prayers under her breath. I tried to tell myself it was stress, exhaustion, anything but what it felt like. At exactly 6 a.m., the front door unlocked itself. I watched the deadbolt slide back with a soft click. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of old wood, candle wax, and something faintly rotten. From outside, a line of people stood in the fog, their heads bowed, faces hidden in shadow. They didn't move. They didn't breathe. At the front of the line stood Mrs. Klein. She lifted her head slowly and smiled at me with a mouth that opened far too wide. "You're late," she said gently. "The service has already begun." Behind her, the church bell rang. I slammed the door and shoved my shoulder against it, heart racing. The knocking didn't come. Instead, the singing grew louder, no longer outside, but inside the house. The walls vibrated softly, like they were resonating with the hymn. Nora screamed when the hallway lights flicked on. Footprints, bare, wet, and dark, appeared on the floor one by one, forming a path that led toward the bedroom. They stopped inches from her feet. Then a voice spoke from everywhere at once. "Welcome home." The footprints turned and began moving back toward the front door. Against every instinct I had, I knew what would happen if we followed them, and what would happen if we didn't. Outside, the fog thickened, swallowing the street, the houses, the world beyond Hollow Creek. The church bell rang again, closer this time, as if the building itself was leaning toward us. Nora grabbed my hand. "We can't stay," she said, tears in her eyes. "But I don't think it's going to let us leave." The singing reached its final note, and the front door opened once more. Barefoot, half-dressed, we tore through the fog like animals fleeing a fire. The footprints vanished the moment we stepped outside, replaced by a path of dim lanterns that hadn't been there before. They lined the road leading uphill, straight toward the church. "No," I whispered, pulling Nora the opposite direction. The moment we turned away, the lanterns went out. The fog thickened, pressing in so hard it felt solid. Shapes moved within it, figures walking calmly, confidently, as if they knew exactly where they were going. We didn't. Every road curved back on itself. Every turn led us closer to the hill. Finally, we stumbled into the churchyard without realizing it. The doors stood wide open now, light pouring out like a wound split open in the dark. Inside, rows of pews were filled, every seat occupied. They all turned to face us at once. The singing stopped. A space opened in the front row, 2 empty seats. Waiting, I don't remember walking inside. One moment we were standing in the doorway, frozen with fear, and the next we were seated among them. The pews creaked under the combined weight of bodies that felt wrong, too cold, too still. The congregation turned forward in unison. At the altar stood a figure wearing a pastor's robe that hung loosely over a frame that looked hollowed out. Its face was hidden in shadow, but I could see its hands, long, pale, fingers bent like they'd forgotten how joints worked. It raised one hand. "Let us welcome our new members," it said. Every head turned toward us again. I felt something press into my chest, sinking deep, rooting itself there. Memories flickered, faces I didn't recognize, lives I hadn't lived, all bleeding together. Nora squeezed my hand once. Then she stood up. She walked toward the altar without looking back. The congregation began to sing, and this time, I sang with them. Weeks passed, though time felt distorted. Days and nights blurred together inside Hollow Creek. I woke each morning seated in the same pew, surrounded by the same faces, the same unnatural quiet. The singing never stopped. It drifted through my mind, following me even when I slept. I tried to speak, to ask Nora if she remembered leaving, but her eyes were always blank, focused on something beyond the room, somewhere I could not see. Visitors never came. The town outside the church was empty. Even the gas station clerk had vanished. The building seemed to breathe, the air pulsing with the cadence of the hymn. Sometimes I caught glimpses of other new members, faces pale and wide-eyed, seated in pews, trembling as though they understood the weight of what had been promised to them. I realized then that the church wasn't simply a building, it was a trap, a place that waited patiently for those it wanted. And it never let go. One night, I heard the bell ring inside my head. Not outside, not physically, inside. A vibration so deep it shook my chest. I stood, trying to resist, but my legs moved without consent. I walked to the front of the church, where the altar figure waited. Its hands reached out, fingers curling like a predator ready to claim. Nora stood beside me, expression serene, yet entirely lost. The congregation's song rose to a deafening pitch, words stretching unnaturally, echoing in my skull. I tried to run. My body refused, I screamed. No sound escaped. Then the altar figure spoke, calm, deliberate. "You belong now." Everything went silent. When I opened my eyes, I was outside the churchyard, standing alone in the fog. The town was empty. The bell no longer rang. The pamphlet sat at my feet. I picked it up. On the cover, someone had written a new line in ink red as blood. "Next Sunday, you will return." I don't fight it anymore. My name is Lydia Harper, and this happened when I was 24. I had just moved to Maple Hollow, Pennsylvania, to start my first job as a wildlife photographer. The town was small, quiet, surrounded by dense woods that locals called the Whispering Woods. Everyone I asked about it smiled nervously, muttering that I should never go in alone, especially at night. I laughed. I loved the thrill of the unknown. The first few days were normal. Birds, deer, and the occasional fox kept me busy. But the moment I stepped past the tree line deeper than anyone had warned me to, I heard it. A faint murmur, almost like a conversation, but no one was there. The trees themselves seemed to lean closer, their branches twisting in unnatural patterns. When I tried to leave, I realized I had wandered further than I remembered. The path had vanished. The whispers grew louder, circling me, indistinct but urgent. I felt a presence watching, just beyond the trees. I convinced myself it was my imagination, nerves, or the isolation playing tricks. But that night, back at my small rented cabin on the edge of town, I couldn't sleep. The wind outside carried faint whispers, repeating words I couldn't understand, syllables dragging as if spoken under duress. I peeked through the window. Dark shapes moved at the tree line, just out of sight. The next morning, I tried to shake it off. Maple Hollow seemed normal. Kids walked to school, cars rolled down the roads, the sun glinted off windows. Yet everyone I spoke to avoided the topic of the woods. Later that day, I found small footprints circling my cabin, too small for any animal I knew. Each step pressed into the dirt deliberately, forming an odd spiral. I followed them to the back door, where they abruptly stopped. A single word had been scratched into the wooden door frame. "Stay." I tried to leave that morning, packed my camera gear, my backpack, and every ounce of courage I had. But the moment I stepped into the woods again, the whispers returned. Louder, sharper, circling me like a predator. I thought I recognized the words this time. "Don't leave. Come closer." My skin crawled. Branches scratched at my arms, leaving thin red lines. Shadows shifted in ways that didn't match the light. Every step I took forward seemed to double the distance behind me, as if the forest was stretching and bending just to trap me. I stumbled onto an old clearing, one I had never photographed before, even in my maps. There, in the center, a circle of stones stood. They weren't natural. Symbols were etched into each one, faint but unmistakable. The whispers grew into distinct voices, chanting in unison. My instincts screamed at me to run, but something held me in place. A fascination, fear, and a growing sense that the forest wanted me. The chanting continued for hours, though I couldn't tell if it was morning or night. My watch had stopped. My phone showed no signal. Panic surged through me, yet I couldn't move. Every direction looked the same, every tree a reflection of the last. I finally saw movement among the stones. Figures, tall, thin, almost translucent, emerged from the forest edge. Their faces were featureless, yet I felt them staring directly at me. One of them raised a hand and pointed. My legs moved before I could think. I ran, snapping photos wildly as I fled, hoping to document what I could. The forest seemed alive, shifting under my feet. Roots tangled, branches twisted, paths disappeared. Then, in the chaos, I heard it again, soft but insistent. "You belong here now." By the time I reached the cabin, I thought I had escaped. But when I looked at the photos on my camera, every frame showed those figures, closer and closer. No matter how fast I had run, I couldn't sleep that night. Every shadow in the cabin seemed to breathe, and the whispers came again. Softer now, curling around the walls like smoke. I tried to convince myself it was imagination, but the footprints had returned, small, wet, curling along the floorboards toward my bedroom. They stopped just short of my bed, forming the same spiral I had seen outside. I wanted to leave, but my car wouldn't start. The engine turned over once, coughed, and died. Even the gas station was empty when I ran down there. The clerk had vanished. Only the forest remained, pressing against the edges of the town like a living thing. I went back to the cabin, exhausted and terrified, and the whispers became clearer. "You can stay, or join us." I didn't understand what join meant, but the chill in my bones made it clear that refusing wasn't an option. That night, I left the cabin, and the forest welcomed me. The deeper I went into the woods, the more the whispers became voices I recognized. Snippets of conversations from my past, names I had long forgotten, memories I hadn't wanted to recall. They all mixed together, echoing through the trees. I stumbled over roots that weren't there before, and the branches seemed to reach for me, blocking my escape. Eventually, I reached a small clearing where the stone circle stood again. This time, the symbols glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. I realized the whispers weren't random. They were guiding me. I couldn't stop myself from stepping into the circle. Suddenly, the trees parted, revealing dozens of figures standing silently around the edge of the clearing. Their faces were pale, their eyes empty, yet every one of them felt familiar, as if they had been waiting for me for decades. The forest itself seemed to sigh in anticipation. And then I heard a single voice, loud, clear, and impossibly close. "Welcome home, Lydia." Once I stepped into the circle, the forest seemed to breathe around me, bending the fog and shadows like it had a mind of its own. The faceless figures closed in slightly, yet none touched me. I felt a strange calm wash over me, though my heart still raced. The whispers turned into coherent words, guiding me. "Sit, listen, learn." I obeyed, sinking to my knees on the cold earth. The forest floor pulsed beneath me, and the chanting of the trees, or whatever inhabited them, filled my ears. My own memories were replayed in flashes, childhood fears, mistakes I had tried to forget, moments of joy and loss. Every detail was examined, every choice catalogued, as if the woods itself were judging me. Time lost all meaning. I didn't know how long I'd been kneeling when one figure stepped forward. Its face, still featureless, tilted toward me. And in a voice like wind through hollow branches, it asked, "Will you stay, or leave and forget?" I tried to speak, to say I wanted to leave, but my voice failed me. The forest answered for me instead. The fog thickened until it was almost solid, pressing against my skin, whispering, "You cannot leave what has chosen you." My legs refused to move, my hands trembled. Then, the figures began moving in unison, circling me in a slow, deliberate rhythm. With each step, the ground seemed to pulse in response. Shapes appeared in the shadows between the trees. More figures, taller, thinner, their presence heavy, patient, inevitable. I realized that the forest wasn't just a place, it was alive. It wasn't trying to scare me, it was claiming me. Every whisper, every subtle tug on my mind had been preparing me. As the circle closed in tighter, I stopped resisting. My fear melted into acceptance, and I understood the truth the town had tried to warn me about. Those who enter the Whispering Woods alone never truly leave. Days, or maybe weeks, passed, though I no longer had a sense of time. The forest taught me its language. Every rustle, every sway of the branches, every whisper carried meaning. I could feel the presence of those who had come before me, their essence woven into the fog, their voices part of the eternal chorus. Sometimes I wandered the edges of the clearing, photographing the trees, the stone circle, the shadows, as if documenting a world no one else could see. The faceless figures became familiar. They didn't speak, yet I understood them perfectly. Their patience was endless, and they never left. I began to notice new arrivals, figures moving hesitantly into the forest, lost souls drawn by the same whispers that had called me. The forest guided them, the circle waiting patiently. Every arrival strengthened the presence of the woods, binding me tighter to its rhythm. By now, I was no longer terrified. I was part of it, part of the whispers, part of the endless shadows. The final change came quietly. One morning, or what felt like morning, I realized the whispers had become my own voice. I spoke to the trees, and they answered. I moved among the figures seamlessly, understanding their intentions, guiding new arrivals without thinking. When I finally looked at the photographs on my camera, I didn't recognize myself. Every frame showed a faceless figure kneeling in the center of the stone circle, surrounded by others just like it. Yet I felt no fear, only belonging. The forest had claimed me completely. Hollow Creek remained quiet, the town outside untouched, unaware of the endless chorus living within the woods. Sometimes travelers disappear. Sometimes they are never found. And the Whispering Woods simply waits. Patient, eternal. I am still here, waiting, listening. And every once in a while, when the wind blows just right, the forest calls a new name. My name is Evan Miles, and this happened when I was 29. I'd just taken a job as a night security guard at an abandoned hospital in Black Ridge, Pennsylvania. The place had been closed for decades, left to rot, with rumors of malpractice, strange deaths, and disappearances. I didn't believe in ghosts, but the pay was good, and curiosity always got the better of me. The first night, I walked the empty hallways with only my flashlight, cutting through the darkness. Paint peeled from the walls, and the smell of mildew and rust lingered like it had been preserved over time. Every step echoed unnaturally, as if the building itself was listening. Then I heard it. Faint cries, distant but desperate, echoing through the corridors. I told myself it was rats, the wind, anything. But the cries were human. They carried fear, pain, and urgency. And they were getting closer. I tried to rationalize it. Old buildings creak, pipes groan. But when I reached the operating theater on the top floor, the temperature dropped drastically. My breath fogged in the flashlight's beam. The cries had become whispers now, indistinct but chilling. Help. Don't leave. Please. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic mixed with decay, as if someone or something had recently been there. I scanned the floor and saw footprints in dust, leading toward the corner where the surgical table stood. They were fresh. Then I noticed movement at the far end of the hall, a shadow quick, darting between rooms. I called out, but no one answered. The shadows seemed to respond, circling me from every angle, just beyond the edge of the flashlight's reach. I realized then that the stories weren't just rumors. This place hadn't forgotten the people who suffered here. And now, it was watching me. I spent the next few nights trying to make sense of what was happening. Each evening, the whispers grew louder, more urgent, as if the building itself was testing me. I began to hear footsteps echoing behind me, though I never saw anyone. Doors that I had locked hours before would be wide open, and hallways twisted in ways that didn't make sense. One night, I discovered a hidden stairwell behind the janitor's closet. The steps were narrow and steep, leading down into darkness that smelled of damp earth and chemicals. I hesitated, but curiosity won. At the bottom, I found a series of rooms, cells, really, lined with metal gurneys and rusted restraints. The air was thick, almost alive, humming with a quiet malevolence. On one of the gurneys lay a figure, curled tightly, its head lifted slowly, revealing hollow eyes that stared straight through me. It whispered my name. I ran back upstairs, shaking, realizing the hospital wasn't empty. It was waiting. The following night, I tried to avoid the basement, but the hospital had its own rules. As I patrolled, I heard the faint scratching of claws or fingernails against the walls. The whispers called from every corner, repeating fragments of my life. "You shouldn't have come. You can't leave. Stay with us." I followed one sound into the pediatric ward. The room was littered with broken toys, rusted cribs, and peeling wallpaper. Shadows flickered in the corners as if alive. On one wall, someone had scrawled, "They remember you." Then I saw movement. Small, quick, darting shapes between the beds. I thought I glimpsed tiny hands, pale and thin, reaching for me. My flashlight flickered and died. In that moment, the temperature plummeted, and I felt something brush past my shoulder, a whisper in my ear, not from the shadows, but inside my head. "You belong here now." I stumbled out, heart hammering, realizing the hospital wasn't just haunted, it was hungry. I tried to quit. I wanted to leave Blackridge, leave the hospital, leave the whispers behind. But each night, the calls returned. My apartment filled with faint scraping noises, shadowed shapes flitting at the edges of my vision. My phone displayed images I hadn't taken. Dark corridors, empty rooms, gurneys stained with shadow. One evening, I returned to the hospital, hoping to confront whatever it was. The front doors were wide open, the usual padlock gone. The hallways were silent at first, but the whispers returned as soon as I stepped inside. They were insistent now, almost commanding. "Come, see, remember." I followed them into the basement, drawn despite every instinct screaming to run. The hidden rooms seemed to stretch further than I remembered. The gurneys had moved, forming a rough circle, and in the center, a figure crouched, its hollow eyes trained on me. Its mouth opened, but no sound came. Yet I understood. It wanted me to stay forever. I stepped closer, heart hammering, and felt the air thicken around me. The whispers swirled, forming words I could feel rather than hear. "You are one of us now." The walls seemed to pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat. I tried to move backward, but my feet were rooted. Figures began emerging from the shadows, hollow faces, pale and silent, gliding across the basement floor. They didn't speak, but their presence pressed down on me, cold and inescapable. One of them reached a hand, fingers unnaturally long and thin, toward my face. I realized then that the hospital hadn't just remembered me. It had claimed me. Every step I thought I'd taken to escape had led me deeper into its grasp. By the time the first light of dawn touched the windows above, I was seated on a gurney, surrounded by the faceless figures. The whispers became a song, and I understood that I would never leave. Night after night, I became part of the hospital's rhythm. The whispers guided me, teaching me the hidden corridors, the secret stairwells, the rooms that never appeared on any map. I learned to recognize the signs: a flicker of shadow, a scraping on the walls, a faint scent of antiseptic mixed with decay. Sometimes, new arrivals appeared at the front doors, curious souls drawn by the stories of Black Ridge. The faceless figures welcomed them, encircling the hesitant newcomers in a silent, patient ritual. I watched from my gurney, understanding that their fear fed the hospital, and that resistance was futile. One night, a man arrived, desperate and trembling. I saw his eyes widen in terror as he realized the hospital wasn't abandoned. It was alive. The walls pulsed, the shadows twisted, and the whispers hummed in unison. "You belong here now." I did nothing to stop him. I couldn't. I had learned that in Black Ridge, the hospital always gets what it wants. By now, I understood the rules. The hospital was patient, didn't force anyone to stay. It merely guided them, whispered their fears, and waited. Resistance only prolonged the inevitable. I wandered the hallways with a sense of purpose, no longer afraid. The walls pulsed beneath my touch, the floorboards responded to my weight, and the whispers welcomed me like an old friend. I saw the hidden rooms, the surgical theaters, the pediatric wards, all alive with faint traces of past horrors. I realized that I wasn't just a visitor, I was a keeper now. Someone had to guide the next lost soul who arrived. I had been chosen. And when a soft scratching sound echoed from the hallway, I knew it was time. A new visitor had come. The hospital waited patiently, and I moved to meet them, whispering softly the words I had once heard. "You belong here now." Time lost all meaning in the hospital. Days and nights blurred together, replaced by a constant rhythm of whispers, creaking walls, and shifting shadows. I moved through the hallways like a ghost, guiding new arrivals silently. Each person who stepped inside was measured, their fear catalogued, their resistance noted. The hospital consumed everything: memories, sanity, hope. I had begun to notice subtle changes in myself. My reflection in the cracked windows looked pale, hollow, eyes wider than normal, features tense, yet calm. I felt no hunger, no pain, only the weight of being a part of the hospital itself. Sometimes, I caught glimpses of people I once knew in the shadows. Lost visitors, faceless now, integrated into the building's endless rhythm. I realized I would never leave. Not because the doors were locked, but because the hospital had made me a part of its consciousness. I belonged, whether I wanted to or not. One night, a faint scratching echoed from the end of the hallway. A newcomer had arrived. I turned to face them, calm yet commanding. Their eyes widened, panic flooding their expression. The whispers swelled, circling the hallway like a living tide. I moved toward them, guiding them to the basement, through the hidden stairwells and past the gurneys that formed their silent circle. The hospital hummed with anticipation. I repeated the words that had once sealed my fate. "You belong here now." By morning, the newcomer was seated among the faceless figures, just as I had been. The hospital fell silent for a moment, satisfied. Outside, Black Ridge remained untouched, ordinary, unaware. But inside, the cycle continued. The building waited, It always waited. I am still here. I walk the hallways. I guide the lost. I whisper their fates. And every time the front doors creak open, I know the hospital will claim another soul. My name is Ryan Calder, and this happened when I was 26. I had been driving through Hollow Creek, Pennsylvania on a late autumn evening. The town was small and quiet, shrouded in mist, and locals had warned me about the old stone bridge outside of town. They didn't give details, just said, "Don't cross it at night." I laughed it off. The sun had dipped below the horizon when I reached the bridge. The stone arch rose from the fog like a dark sentinel over the black water below. My headlights barely cut through the mist, and the air was unusually cold, even for late fall. As I drove onto the bridge, I noticed something strange. The edges of the stone seemed to blur, as if the bridge itself wasn't solid. A faint whispering came from the fog below, almost coaxing me forward. The further I drove, the more the bridge seemed to stretch and sway, and I realized I might not be able to turn back. I tried to reverse, but my car felt sluggish, as if the bridge itself was gripping the tires. The whispers grew louder, almost forming words. Cross. Stay. Join us. My pulse pounded in my ears, each heartbeat echoing against the stone. The fog thickened until I could barely see the hood of my car. Shapes emerged from the mist. Figures standing along the edges of the bridge, impossibly still. Pale, their eyes glinting faintly in my headlights. One of them raised a hand, beckoning me forward. I slammed my foot on the brakes. The car skidded slightly, but the bridge stretched on, longer than it should have been. Behind me, the mist seemed to close in, swallowing the exit. I gripped the steering wheel with white-knuckled hands as the car crawled forward. The whispers twisted into something clearer, chanting my name, almost coaxing me to step out of the vehicle. The fog shifted unnaturally, forming shapes that danced just beyond my vision. Tall, thin figures with hollow eyes, waiting patiently at the sides of the bridge. I glanced down at the water beneath. The river was black, like oil, and shadows moved beneath its surface, as if the current carried more than just water. For a brief moment, I thought I saw hands rising toward the car. Then the fog swallowed them. The bridge seemed to lengthen with every second I drove, the stone beneath me stretching endlessly. Panic surged, but no matter how I turned the wheel, the exit was gone. The whispers became a chorus. You cannot leave. You belong to the bridge. I realized the stories weren't warnings. They were truth. Crossing the bridge meant entering its world, one that did not release the living. I tried to force myself to stop and climb out, but the bridge wouldn't let me. The mist seemed to press down, curling around the car, pushing me forward. Every glance to the sides revealed more figures, silent, pale, faceless, their presence heavy and suffocating. Suddenly, a shape appeared in the middle of the bridge, a tall figure, impossibly thin, draped in dark, tattered clothing. Its face was obscured, yet I felt it staring directly at me. The whispers sharpened, urgent, insistent. Step out. Join us. My heart raced as the bridge trembled slightly beneath the tires. The fog thickened into near solid walls around the vehicle. I slammed the brakes again, but the car skidded slightly, the bridge stretching even further ahead, twisting unnaturally into the darkness. I understood then the bridge wasn't a path over water. It was a threshold, a trap, and crossing it meant surrendering to something beyond understanding. The car's engine roared as I tried to push forward, each inch of the bridge feeling like miles. The fog twisted around me, forming whispering faces and reaching hands, shadows that flickered in and out of existence. My headlights caught glimpses of shapes crouching at the edges of the bridge, pale, impossibly thin, and silent, but always moving closer. The whispers weren't just voices anymore. They were memories. Fragments of lives lost, fears I had buried, names I hadn't heard in years. Every time I thought I saw the end of the bridge, it stretched farther, impossibly long, like the fog itself was reshaping reality. Then I saw it. A massive shadow rising from the river below, its form twisting like smoke and shadow combined. It beckoned with elongated limbs, and the whispers became a chorus, urging me to surrender. Step out, join us, belong. Panic consumed me, but I knew I couldn't stop. The bridge had me, and it wasn't letting go. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles bled, heart hammering. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet my feet pressed the accelerator unconsciously. The fog pressed tighter, whispering, breathing, alive. Figures moved along the edges, some crawling, some standing impossibly tall, their hollow eyes locked on me. Then I noticed something horrifying. The bridge wasn't just stretching, it was alive. The stone beneath me twisted subtly, pulsating in rhythm with the whispers. Every crack seemed to breathe, and I felt a vibration through the car, as if the bridge was testing me, guiding me, claiming me. A pale figure appeared directly in front of the headlights. I slammed on the brakes. The car skidded, but the figure didn't move. It was part of the bridge itself, its form merging with stone and fog. The whispers became overwhelming. You cannot leave. You belong to Hollow Creek. By then, I understood. The bridge had chosen me. I was trapped, and there would be no return. I forced my eyes forward, barely seeing through the swirling fog. The bridge beneath me quivered like a living thing, and the water below roared, though I couldn't see it clearly. The pale figures had multiplied, now filling the edges of the bridge as far as I could see. Some crouched low, others stood impossibly tall, all staring, all waiting. A faint whisper slithered into my mind. The river remembers. The bridge chooses. You are ours now. My vision blurred. Shapes in the fog began forming recognizable faces. Friends, strangers, lost travelers. Their eyes were hollow voids, yet they spoke to me without moving their lips. The bridge twisted ahead like a spiral, impossibly long, and I realized it had no end. Resistance was futile. Panic clawed at my chest, but the whispers were comforting now, guiding me, reshaping my fear into submission. I gripped the wheel, powerless, and let the bridge lead me deeper into its world. I stopped trying to fight. The bridge pulsed beneath me, alive and aware. Every vibration, every whisper, pressed into my bones, erasing my fear and replacing it with reluctant acceptance. The figures no longer intimidated me. They were part of the bridge's rhythm, and I was becoming part of it too. The mist thickened, enveloping the car and wrapping it in an unnatural silence. I felt hands brush against the vehicle, gentle, coaxing, urging me onward. The pale figures moved alongside the car, their presence a constant reminder that escape was impossible. Somewhere ahead, I thought I saw a light, a possible exit. But as I approached, the bridge shifted. The light stretched into nothing, the stone beneath me twisting endlessly. I understood now that Hollow Creek was more than a town. It was a trap, a living entity that consumed those who dared cross the bridge. And I realized the truth. The bridge didn't just claim the living, it reshaped them. By the 9th night, I had stopped trying to resist. The whispers had become part of my thoughts, guiding every move, reminding me that the bridge was patient. I no longer saw the pale figures as terrifying. They were companions now, silent and ever watchful, moving alongside the car as it glided over the living stone. The bridge stretched endlessly ahead, fog thick and impenetrable. Yet I felt the pull of something greater, an unseen current beneath the water, ancient and hungry. Shadows danced below, forming vague shapes of lost travelers, all reaching toward me but never quite touching. I realized the bridge existed beyond time, beyond reality, and that crossing it was less about travel and more about surrender. Every inch I moved felt both eternal and instantaneous. The whispers had become my own voice, repeating their chants inside my mind. You are ours. You belong. Forever. I accepted it. I knew escape was impossible, and any hope of leaving Hollow Creek was gone. The final realization hit as I reached the farthest visible point of the bridge. There was no end. The bridge existed only to claim and contain, to pull the living into its eternal rhythm. The figures flanked me now completely, their hollow eyes fixed, waiting for me to fully surrender. The whispers became louder, a deafening chorus inside my mind. Step out, join us, belong to Hollow Creek. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my nails dug into the leather. I tried to scream, but no sound came. The car wasn't mine anymore. It was part of the bridge, a vessel moving along its will. I understood then that the bridge didn't just trap travelers, it transformed them, adding their essence to its endless fog and shadows. I was no longer just Ryan Calder. I was a part of the vanishing bridge, another whisper, another shadow, waiting for the next lost soul to cross into Hollow Creek. My name is Clara Bennett, and this happened when I was 24. I was traveling alone through Ravens Hollow, Pennsylvania, on a rainy autumn night. My car had broken down miles from the nearest town, and the fog was so thick I could barely see the road. Then I saw it, a small, flickering neon sign that read, Ravens Hollow Motel, vacancies. Relief washed over me. I didn't care that it looked old and run down. I needed shelter. The motel was silent when I arrived, the parking lot empty except for a few rusted vehicles. The fluorescent light above the entrance buzzed faintly, casting shadows that moved unnaturally across the walls. The air smelled stale, damp, with a faint hint of something metallic underneath. The clerk at the front desk didn't look up when I entered. His eyes were hollow, unblinking, and his smile was stiff, unnatural. He handed me the key without a word, whispering only, Room 6. Be quiet. Room 6 was small and cramped, the wallpaper peeling, the bed stained and lumpy. I dropped my bag and tried to relax, but the air felt heavy, oppressive, almost alive. The sound of the rain outside was muffled, replaced by faint creaks and whispers from the walls. As I unpacked, I noticed something strange. The mirror reflected not just me, but the entire room differently. Shadows moved in the corners that weren't there before, and I swore I saw a figure crouched by the bed. My pulse quickened, but when I blinked, it was gone. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was exhaustion, but the whispering grew louder. Not from outside, not from the hall. It was inside my head. You shouldn't be here. Don't move. Stay silent. By the time I pulled the covers over my head, I realized the motel wasn't just abandoned, it was waiting. Waiting for me, sleep came fitfully. Every creak of the floorboards outside my door made me flinch. The whispers didn't stop. They threaded through the walls and seeped under the door, barely audible but insistent. You shouldn't be here. You belong to the Hollow. Around midnight, I heard footsteps in the hallway, slow, deliberate. No one knocked. No one called my name. I clutched the blanket to my chest, straining to see through the darkness. The light above the door flickered, casting long shadows that stretched down the hallway like elongated hands. Curiosity and terror mingled in equal measure, and I opened the door just slightly. The hallway was empty, but the air smelled of decay and iron, and faint whispers seemed to echo from the ceiling itself. Something had moved in the shadows. I couldn't see it clearly, but I felt it. An unseen presence watching, waiting. The motel wasn't empty. It was alive. And it had noticed me. I tried to convince myself to leave. But the hallway seemed to stretch endlessly, twisting in impossible angles. The door to room 6 closed with a soft click behind me. I turned back. There was no way out. Every room I passed was empty, yet I felt eyes on me from behind each door, whispering my name in soft, urgent tones. Then I saw movement near the end of the hallway. A tall, shadowy figure gliding silently, impossibly slow, its face hidden beneath a hood. The whispers surged, growing louder, more demanding. "You cannot leave. You belong to us." I ran blindly back toward room 6. When I slammed the door, the figure vanished, leaving only the hum of the fluorescent light above. The whispers persisted, though, echoing inside my mind, warning me that the motel never releases those it claims. I sank to the floor, trembling, understanding I was trapped. The silent motel had already chosen me. By morning, the rain had stopped, but the motel remained suffocatingly silent. I didn't want to leave, yet I knew I had to see if the outside world still existed. As I stepped into the hallway, the whispers softened, almost coaxing me forward. The hollow remembers. You cannot escape. I reached the lobby, hoping for the clerk to be gone, but he was still there, silent and unblinking. His eyes followed me as I walked past. Something in the way the air moved around him made it clear that leaving would not be simple. The doors to the outside appeared normal, yet when I touched the handle, the metal felt icy, almost sticky, as if the building itself resisted me. I backed away and noticed a stairwell leading to the basement. Compelled, I descended. The air grew colder with each step, carrying a faint metallic scent and the unmistakable sound of scratching from the walls. It was as if the motel itself breathed in anticipation. The basement was worse than I imagined. Rusted lockers lined the walls, and broken furniture was scattered across the damp concrete floor. Shadows flickered unnaturally, stretching longer than the light allowed. The whispers had become voices now, faint, urgent, overlapping, telling me things I didn't understand. Join. Stay. Never leave. I saw shapes moving in the darkness. At first, I thought they were rats, but they were humanoid, thin, pale, with hollow eyes reflecting the faint light. They didn't speak, but their presence pressed against me, cold and suffocating. A door at the far end of the basement creaked open, revealing a room filled with mirrors. Each mirror reflected my terrified face, but twisted. Elongated features, hollow eyes, and a pale shadow lurking behind me in every reflection. I realized the motel didn't just trap its guests. It reshaped them, preparing them to become part of its hollow memory. And I could feel it beginning with me. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the mirrors. Each reflection seemed alive, moving independently, whispering things I couldn't quite understand. The pale figures emerged from the shadows, circling me slowly, their hollow gazes fixed. I realized they weren't trying to harm me. They were waiting, patient, guiding me into the motel's rhythm. A voice, soft but commanding, echoed in my mind. The hollow takes those who linger. You are ready. My reflection shifted again. The figure behind me in the mirror raised a hand, beckoning me forward. I felt my own hand rise involuntarily, reaching toward it, and a chill ran down my spine as I realized I couldn't resist. The basement walls seemed to pulse with life. Each step I took toward the mirror felt heavier, as though I were walking through water. The whispers surrounded me completely, a chorus of lost voices, pressing me toward acceptance. I knew then that the motel had chosen me, and I would not leave. The moment I touched the mirror, the air changed. The whispers surged, nearly deafening, and the shadows in the reflections moved closer, reaching toward me. My body felt heavy, my limbs sluggish, as though the motel itself was pulling me in. I struggled, but the pull was irresistible. Suddenly, the mirrors rippled like water, and I could see into another space. Dark corridors filled with faceless figures. Rooms stacked endlessly, each inhabited by someone who had lingered too long. My heart raced as I understood that this was my future. Trapped within the motel, another lost soul among many. I fell to my knees, the shadows closing in around me. The whispers became a chant, repeating the same words over and over. You belong, you cannot leave. The hollow claims you. As the basement consumed me, I realized the silent motel was alive, and anyone who entered its doors became part of its endless memory. Just as I was about to, I no longer recognized myself in the mirrors. My reflection had become hollow, pale, eyes empty, yet somehow still aware. The whispers were louder now, echoing inside my skull, repeating, "You belong, you are ours, stay forever." I wanted to run, but my feet didn't obey. The basement seemed to expand infinitely. Hallways stretching into darkness, mirrors lining every wall, each one showing me in different stages of surrender. The pale figures guided me slowly, deliberately, toward a distant doorway I had never noticed before. The air smelled of metal and decay, thick and suffocating. As I approached, I glimpsed the shadows of previous visitors moving within the walls, their silent faces watching, waiting. The motel didn't just trap people, it absorbed them, reshaping their very essence until they became part of its endless memory. I realized with horror that I was next. Resistance was gone. I had become a prisoner, part of Raven's Hollow forever. The doorway opened into a room unlike any I had seen. It was filled with faintly glowing shadows, each a trapped soul, suspended mid-motion, faces hollow, their whispers mingling into a constant chant. The pale figures guided me to the center. I tried to resist, but the mirrors on the walls rippled and reflected my hollowed face, compelling me forward. I stepped into the center, and the shadows enveloped me. I felt my body dissolve, my essence stretching, twisting, merging with the motel itself. The whispers became part of me, and I understood the truth. The silent motel didn't kill, it claimed. It preserved its victims, reshaping them into shadows that waited for the next lost traveler. I am still here. Somewhere in Raven's Hollow, if you find the silent motel at night, you might see me in the mirrors, guiding you with hollow eyes, part of the endless memory of this living, whispering place. My name is Ethan Marshall, and this happened when I was 29. I had always loved hiking, especially in Pennsylvania's remote forests. One weekend, I decided to explore Black Hollow, a region locals whispered about but rarely visited. The woods were dense, dark, and eerily silent, the kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes your own heartbeat deafening. As I trekked deeper, the fog rolled in, thick and gray, swallowing the path behind me. Every step felt heavier, as if the forest itself resisted my progress. I glanced at my GPS. Strangely, it read, "Off the grid," though I hadn't left the marked trail. The trees twisted unnaturally, gnarled branches clawing at the sky, casting shadows that moved despite the still air. Then I heard it, a faint whisper, carried on the wind. "Don't go further. Stay." I froze, scanning the fog. No one was there. Yet I felt eyes on me, hidden in the shadows. That's when I realized the woods weren't just empty. They were waiting. I tried to retrace my steps, but the path seemed to have vanished. Every turn led me deeper into the mist, the forest warping around me. The trees now loomed like giants, their branches forming cages overhead. My compass spun uselessly, and the sunlight barely pierced the dense canopy. Then I heard it again, a soft, deliberate crunching of leaves behind me. I spun around, heart racing, but no one was there. The fog thickened, and I glimpsed shadowy figures moving between the trees, tall, thin, pale, and impossibly still. They weren't animals. They weren't human. A sudden chill ran through my body as a whisper grazed my ear. "You belong to the hollow now." The forest seemed alive, reshaping itself, closing off any hope of escape. I realized then that Black Hollow didn't just trap people physically, it claimed them mentally, bending their fear into obedience. I stumbled forward, heart pounding, desperate to find the trail again. Every tree I passed seemed alive, their branches twisting toward me as if trying to hold me in place. The whispers grew louder, a chorus of voices weaving in and out of the wind. "Stay, never leave. Belong to the hollow." I stopped suddenly. In the fog ahead, a faint shape emerged. A cabin, old and dilapidated, its windows dark but oddly inviting. I approached cautiously, hoping for a moment of safety. Yet the air around it was thick and suffocating, heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay. Through the broken window, I glimpsed shadowy figures inside, their pale eyes glinting. They didn't move, yet I could feel their gaze penetrating me. I realized the cabin wasn't abandoned, it was a lure, and Black Hollow had led me to it deliberately. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but the forest had other plans. I circled the cabin, searching for a way in or out, but the forest seemed to close behind me. Every path disappeared into the dense fog, leaving me trapped. The whispers became clearer, almost intelligible, urging me forward. "Come inside. Join us. Stay forever." Peering through the window, I saw dozens of shadowy figures crouched and standing, all staring silently at me. Their movements were minimal, but the weight of their presence pressed against my chest. I felt a compulsion to approach, to step into the cabin, though terror screamed in my mind. Suddenly, one figure moved closer to the window, a pale, thin humanoid with hollow eyes, pointing directly at me. The whispers intensified, now a chorus inside my head. "You belong. There is no leaving. The hollow claims you." I knew then that Black Hollow wasn't just a forest. It was a living entity, and I was its prey. I backed away from the cabin, panic clawing at me. The forest had grown darker, the fog thickening until I could barely see my own hands. Every step I took seemed to stretch the ground beneath me, the trees bending inward as if to trap me. The whispers were relentless now, circling my mind, each one a thread pulling me toward the cabin. "You cannot leave. The hollow waits. Belong to us." I stumbled over roots and rocks, my breath sharp and ragged, when I realized the forest was no longer random. The trees had shifted, forming narrow corridors, guiding me toward a central clearing where shadows danced unnaturally. In the center stood a massive tree, gnarled and blackened, its branches twisting like grasping fingers. Beneath it, figures, tall, thin, faceless, watched me. The realization hit. The forest had led me here, orchestrated my every step. Black Hollow wasn't a place. It was a predator, and I was the prey. The clearing was suffocating. Every breath I took felt heavy, as though the air itself was trying to hold me down. The faceless figures didn't move, yet I felt their awareness pressing on me, evaluating me. The whispers grew louder, repeating the same chilling words. You belong forever. Join the Holo. A movement caught my eye. From behind the blackened tree, a figure emerged, taller than the others, its face obscured, limbs unnaturally long. It didn't speak, yet I understood its intent. I was to step closer, to surrender. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like lead, refusing to obey. The shadows began to pulse rhythmically, as though the forest itself had a heartbeat. I realized then that Black Hollow wasn't just claiming space, it was claiming me. My mind, my fear, my very essence were being absorbed into the forest's endless memory. Escape was no longer an option. I sank to my knees, the forest pressing against me from all sides. The whispers became a deafening roar inside my mind, filling me with visions of lost travelers trapped in the hollow, their faces pale and eyes empty, twisted into expressions of despair. The faceless figures moved closer, circling, not threatening, but guiding me. A predator herding its prey. Then I noticed the blackened tree's roots, twisting, thick, and alive. They writhed across the ground, reaching toward me as if the forest itself wanted to claim my body. I tried to stand, to run, but the roots coiled lightly around my ankles, holding me in place. Panic surged through me, but a voice echoed in my head, calm and commanding. You are part of us now. The Hollow remembers. You cannot leave. I understood then that my fear wasn't meant to drive me away. It was meant to bend me, to make me submit to Black Hollow's will. The forest seemed to breathe around me. Shadows shifted, the fog curling like living tendrils. My limbs were numb, my mind fogged by the whispers repeating endlessly. You belong. Surrender. Join the Hollow. Every instinct screamed to resist, yet I felt my body moving forward, guided by some invisible force. The tall, faceless figure at the tree's base extended a hand. I felt compelled to reach out, my own hand rising, unbidden. When our fingers nearly touched, the air thickened, the mist wrapping around me like a cocoon. My vision blurred, and the forest around me began to stretch and twist, folding in on itself, as if Black Hollow was swallowing me into its memory. I understood fully. This wasn't just a forest. It was alive, sentient. And it didn't just trap its victims, it consumed them, bending their essence into its endless void. And I was next. The fog thickened to a point where I could barely see my own hands. The whispers had become an unbroken chant inside my head. You belong. The Hollow remembers. Surrender. I tried to run, but my legs refused to obey. The roots of the blackened tree had fully coiled around my ankles, yet they didn't crush me. They guided me forward, dragging me slowly into the heart of the forest. Around me, the faceless figures multiplied, emerging from the mist like extensions of the trees themselves. Their presence was both terrifying and mesmerizing, pressing my consciousness toward submission. The forest floor beneath me seemed to pulse with life, and every step felt as though I was moving through water, my body both present and absent. I realized then that Black Hollow didn't just trap people. It rewrote them. Every whisper, every movement, every shadow reshaped me, bending my fear into obedience. I was no longer merely a visitor. I was becoming part of the forest itself. The final moment came when the tall, faceless figure guided me to the center of the clearing. The blackened tree's roots wrapped around me completely, lifting me slightly off the ground. The mist thickened, swirling with faces of lost travelers, their hollow eyes staring into mine. The whispers fused into one commanding voice. "You belong, forever. Join the hollow." A blinding cold coursed through me as my body dissolved into the mist. My senses expanded, my fear transformed into understanding. I was becoming one with Black Hollow, another shadow in the forest's endless memory. The faceless figures dispersed into the trees, leaving only the whispering fog and the blackened roots pulsating with life. If you ever wander into Black Hollow, you might glimpse me in the fog, guiding the lost. I am part of the forest now, another soul claimed by its sentient darkness, waiting for the next traveler to step too far.